Joining me. P.S. Hinga, let me begin with you. What was the biggest cause of delays when it came to delivering this project? I mean, we're expecting it to at least be up and running 2 years ago.
Thank you very much, Victoria, good evening to your viewers. And let me begin by congratulating you. We all read about your achievements the other day. Victoria, straight on to this particular issue. Let me begin by saying that the development of BRT is an extremely complex issue because there are so many pieces that need to come together for you to be able to deliver the system. Now, BRT, maybe a lot of people expect is just buying buses, building infrastructure. Let me say that is the easier part. The most difficult part of the implementation of BRT, and I speak from experience because, Victoria, before I came here, I spent 20 years in South Africa, and one of the projects I implemented was BRT, is the planning and bringing all the pieces together. Now, where are we now with respect to BRT? As you correctly said in my tweet, we have awarded the contract for Line 2, which is a design and build. So the design part has already begun, and the construction, if you go on Thika Road, they've already started holding, and the construction is going to begin. The most advanced of the 5 BRT corridors was actually line number 3. Line number 3 is funded by the EU, as you've correctly said. The only thing I can correct is the figures. You've said it is 5 billion, it's actually more. The 5 billion was the grant that we're getting from EU. But for you to be able to use the EU funding, there are so many things that needs to be in place. One of them being that if you're going to remove people who have encroached, for example, on our corridors, then you have got to compensate them. And when you look at that line number 3, which starts in Dandora and passes Juja Road, there is literally no road reserve that is left. And line number 3 was the most advanced of all the other lines because it had designs and it had funder. So as government, we sat down and we said, what are we going to do? We looked for one of the 5 lines, which was line number 2, which has least encroachment. And we said, let's begin what is called an inception phase. And this is the phase that is beginning. But Victoria, lastly on this point, it's important to know that there is nobody who does not take a pause and reevaluate. When we started finding a lot of headwinds in the implementation, we took a pause and said, what is the intention? The intention is to decongest. And the way to decongest Nairobi, we found the best way to go about it is by rolling out commuter rail. Why? Because we don't have as much encroachment. We have the reserve, we have the lines. So we have gone ahead and built over 10 stations. We have done the ticketing system, and we have purchased the first lot.
So this to be clear,
all part of providing a public transport system.
Right. So to be clear, the trains are not replacing the BRT. It's an entry point, if you will. It is.
What you need to look at, Victoria, is an integrated public transport system, which also includes the NMT, non-motorized transport. Because, Victoria, majority of people in Nairobi, they walk, they don't drive, and they don't use public transport. And that's what you're seeing a lot of work being done by NMS.
Okay.
So for us, we are looking at it as a holistic issue rather than looking at it as only BRT.
Right.
But BRT will be a reality. The only thing that we want to say, it is extremely complex. Remember, you have to have a dedicated lane. And that means if you're going to dedicate a lane, you have got to go and expand existing infrastructure.
All right, let me bring in Engineer Gitau on that, because a lot of people have been wondering what kind of BRT are we talking about here? When you're looking at some of the corridors that have been earmarked, Ngong Road, for instance, it's gone through an upgrade, but many engineers saying it hasn't given provisions for BRT, and that is going to incur more costs if you're going to build stations or whatever it may be. But what kind of BRT? Because you have a BRT Light, and then you have BRT Gold Standard. Engineer, which BRT system are we looking at for Nairobi?
Thank you very much, Victoria. The scoring card for a BRT system has a very broad criteria of categorizing the service as gold, silver, or bronze. And as our PS has spoken about the basics of a bus rapid transit system is having a dedicated right of way. There are issues related to busway alignment, the fare correction system, intersection treatments, platform boarding processes, the routes, and a lot of configuration in terms of scoring. And it's based on infrastructure, stations, is also related to the access and integration. At the end of the development of Corridor 2, we are looking at the gold standard.
And how long will it take? Because you keep talking about different corridors. How long will it take before a Kenyan is in a BRT bus and is using these services?
Victoria, I want to assure you that this is a process with a very lengthy value chain. We see that our pilot will be through in 18 months. However, developing the 5 corridors, integrating them, and also looking at the mass rapid transit system as a multimodal process that brings together the commuter rail service, the cyclepaths, the non-motorized traffic ways like pedestrian walkways. And I also want to congratulate you again, like our PES, because we saw you riding a bicycle. That is sustainable mobility.
Right, I was riding a bicycle, engineer, but there were no bike lanes.
Yes, this is part of the mobility plan. Takes time.
So when you talk about the pilot phase being ready in 18 months, what is that exactly?
That is the infrastructure. However, a lot of work, we are having war room situations in our boardrooms. There are hundreds of hours being spent by our experts in Kenya and abroad. They are developing corridor by corridor. We already have a design and build contract for BRT Line 2. BRT Line 3, we are sending the proposal for funding by 30th of September. This expressway is coming in one construction cycle with the BRT package. And you know, we signed an agreement recently on Outer Ring Road, which we call the Nyati line. So a lot of work is happening under the table, and we are happy and lucky to have you invite us today, because at least you are bringing this issue on the table again. Thank you.
Let me bring in P.S. Hinga. When it comes to just the planning, can you say that you overestimated the BRT? You mentioned you were in South Africa for about 19 years. You delivered the BRT system there. When it comes to the Nairobi, Kenya situation, did you rather underestimate how much it would require?
Not at all, Victoria. As I said, the easier part is the construction. The most difficult part is the planning. And I'll tell you why, Victoria. You see, for many years as a country, we know that Nairobi grew in an unplanned way. We have got places mushrooming. And so as you start to design a system like BRT, you cannot just go and copy and paste because it has worked in Tanzania or has worked in Lagos and come and do it here. You have got to design it based on your circumstances. So let me give you one example. If you take the BRT in South Africa, for example, a place like Soweto is about 45 kilometers away from the CBD. That is very different from our situation because in South Africa, the apartheid system pushed the poor black people into the urban edge. Our system is a lot more people living near the CBD. But Victoria, as I said, our mandate is to look at public transport. BRT is not an end in itself. It is a means to an end. And that is why we have looked and said, we must have an integrated public transport system. 65% of the people who use public transport system live within 3 kilometers of a railway line. And that is why we are saying, as we still roll out the BRT, which we know is extremely complex, because, well, let me give you another example of the complexity of BRT, Victoria. Today, the people who deliver a public transport system are matatu owners. If you put a BRT system, the question that you must address is, what are you going to do with the public transport operators?
Right.
that particular issue is extremely complex, because it's either you have money to compensate them, like South Africa they did. They took some, they compensated, and they told them, and they took the matatus and they scrapped them. Others, they put them into bus operating companies and they gave them licenses to operate. This is a complex issue, so I don't think it has been underestimated. We are going through a natural process of its rolling out. And I am very confident now that the design and the construction of Line 2 has begun. As I said in the kicker there, that we believe that by the end of this political term, there will be an inception BRT system, but more importantly, Nairobians will have started to enjoy a reliable public transport system that is anchored on the major backbone, which is going to be commuter rail. And let me just tell you quickly what we have on the commuter rail. We have a system that starts from Central Station and goes to Roiro. That one is already completed. We have a system that leaves Central Station that goes to Embakasi. That is already completed. Yeah. We have a system that will leave Central Station and go all the way to Athi River. The station is already done. We have another system that goes through Eastlands, stops at Dandora. There is Mwiki, there is Githurai, there is Kahawa, and there's another one that goes all the way to Kikuyu. That is our phase one, and the network is built. So let's understand that the most important thing is to provide Kenyans with a reliable public transport system, and that means it has to be anchored on rail, it has to be anchored on buses, and it has to be anchored on
P.S. I have to ask you this really quickly. In terms of the money, it's a big concern to a lot of Kenyans, especially when it comes to big government projects, something like BRT. How much money has been pumped into the project so far, and how much do you anticipate to spend? If you're looking at an end date, you said within this administration, so that's by 2022, how much do you intend to spend?
So this first inception phase, as you said, it's going to cost about 5.6 billion. And that is going to start in Ruiru, and then it's going to go all the way to Kenyatta National Hospital. I think the DG can be able to give you the exact numbers of stations that are going to be built along that line. We are going to have overtaking lanes. We're going to have very well done stations. So that is where we are with respect to this particular phase. Line number 3, which I said starts in Dandora and terminates at Ngong Racecourse. That one is quite a long line. It's already designed, and it's already the EU has already approved the funding, and I believe that is about 42. It's going to cost about 42 billion, but that also includes the purchase of buses along that line, which are going to be electric buses. Thank you.
Let me bring engineer. When it comes to, and PS Hinga alluded to this, accommodating the existing PSV operators, will it be an entire phase out? Will they be complementing the BRT? Will there be a consortium formed for them? Because you're looking at huge job losses when it comes to incorporating BRT. What's the plan?
Thank you, Victoria. I want to give you the confidence that our studies show that there will be increased employment along these lines. When you bring an organized, reliable service, it requires a quality indices that is served by men and women who are professional, and very many people will be serving in these stations. In a nutshell, for example, with the project that we are having on the Thika Road, we are having to retrofit 10 existing bridges. We'll have very many stations, about, will be 10 stations, we'll be deploying with about 13 stations. We are going to have a park and ride service where we shall employ people. We shall have a bus depot cleaning and deploying the service. And one thing, Victoria, I have to say is that we started engaging the public transportation operators from 22nd March 2019 with the formation of a task force by the Cabinet Secretary of Transport, of which Namata chairs. And we've been working with them around the operational plans, investment issues, business plans, financial modeling, and they are well on board with us. We have even given them an office in shared house, 6th floor, so that we are living next to each other and scanning all those complex processes the PS is talking about. However, we stand accused because we have not gotten this voice outside the boardroom. Soon, we are crafting a communication plan that we shall now bring this story to the people. Okay. And that is where maybe we are having a missing link. Thank you, Victoria.
P.S. Let me finish with you. A pressing question I'm seeing here on social media. Many people asking, what was the red line all about?
Victoria, the red line, we remember when the Nairobi regeneration team had been set up, we had a 90-day to deliver a couple of things. And one of them was the delivery of some public transport system. And when we faced that particular directive, we looked at what is it that can be achieved within that time. And I'm very impressed that you even know about the BRT light. So what our intention at that point was to say that there's no way within that time we can be able to implement BRT gold standard. And so we wanted to dedicate a line, which is what is the infamous red line. And we were going to run an express service from Kasarani all the way to the CBD. And then that was going to now transition into the BRT gold standard, which the DG has spoken about. But be as it may, as we started looking at the nuances, even of just putting those services along that particular line, we faced one or two challenges. And as I said, there is nobody who doesn't take time to take a pause and reevaluate. And we took a pause and reevaluated and shifted immediate focus to providing the commuter rails system. However, with the view that the BRT is still a promise that is going to be delivered.
All right, so we're counting down 18 months, Bona PS and Engineer. Thank you so much for your time. So we're looking at January or February 2022 for BRT to be fully operational. Is that your word on the show tonight?
That is our word tonight.
Thank you. On that note, let's take a short break here on Sunday Live.